Hi, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Sfarim Chatter podcast. On this episode of the podcast, I'm going to be joined by Rav Dovid Silverman, who is the Dean of Atlanta Scholars Kollel, and he's the publisher, and he found the manuscript of this. The Sefer will be discussing two big volumes titled Matamei Yitzchak from Yitzchak, Marim Tolochko, or Tolochki, from Grodno, and Alashas. There are Alashas, and there's some Chuvas, and there's Mishnayos, a lot of Mishnayos as well, so we'll talk about that. So first of all, thank you, Rav Dovid, for joining me.
Thank you, Rav Nachi. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start off. Tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background.
I'm from Los Angeles. I grew up actually in a small town called Culver City. It's not far from the airport. I didn't have a frum family. In fact, I think as I went back in generations, it was 3 generations. No one was frum. And my family had emigrated from Russia, came to the United States in the Philadelphia, Pittsburgh area. My grandparents were involved as they had drugstores, and then my grandfather moved his family to the West Coast. I think he had enough of his family on the East Coast, and he opened up a drugstore in the Santa Monica area. So I grew up in Culver City. There, I went to public school till 11th grade, and I had a very good chaver of mine, Benji Jacoby, who was a mashpia on me. I think actually he's going to be moving to Lakewood soon, coming from Toronto. So he schlepped me to a day school, and I ended up going to a Jewish high school for 1 year and then to Eretz Yisrael to learn.
Okay, so let's talk about the Sefer. You know, it's mentioned the Sefer, Matamei Yitzchak. There's a lot here. There's a whole story here. I mean, I'm trying to figure out, should we start with the Sefer, start with the story, or start with the Machaber?
I'll segue from, so I moved to, I was in Eretz Yisrael. I came back there from Eretz Yisrael after a few years. I went to Eretz Yisrael. Was there for a number of years, and there was talk about starting this kollel, an out-of-town kollel. It was pretty new. This was in the 80s. And in 1987, I moved down to Atlanta and started this outreach kollel. It was a little unusual. It was not just a regular community kollel. We learned for one seder. We did kiruv for the afternoon and the evening. And I was here now for 35 years. And during the time, so I did all sorts of different projects. One of the projects which I've stayed with the most is working with high school kids. I go to public and private high schools. I do like a lunch. I bring pizza and I have a discussion. I try to engage them. Usually throughout a year, one kid out of these different schools that I would go to would have enough interest to start to learn and then become frum. So it was a cute project. It wasn't massive, but it was just involved in, so I was learning and I was doing this kiruv activity. So one of the schools I go to, it happens to be a very unusual school. It's called Paideia. They don't like that the teachers should be called by their proper names. They're called by their first name. That's how the students address the teachers, and they walk around. It's a pretty it's a grungy school. Like, the kids walk around like they're playing in the backyard. But it's very intelligent. And anyways, I come and do a club there. There was a couple of kids that were interested. So I started a club there many years ago, and I bring pizza. There's a young lady. This is going back about 5-6 years. She was the president of the club. She had blonde hair with a blue streak in it. And her name was Dana Shapiro. So one day, this is in her 12th grade, this is around 2017. So she said, listen, I want to show you something. I have an article here about a great-grandfather of mine who was a rabbi. I said, you have a rabbi in your family? The whole thing didn't add up. She didn't look like she was so Jewish. Anyway, so she showed me this article. The article was Gershon Jerome Tolochko, who was a Reform rabbi. I think to myself, I'm an Orthodox rabbi. This Reform rabbi is very nice, Anyways, I said, you must be very proud. You come from such yichus. Anyways, the name, though, and I saw the name of the article, it was just sort of stuck in the back of my head. So on the way home from this group that I gave, I called my father in the West Coast, and I said, Dad, does the name Tolochko mean anything to us? So he says, your great-grandmother's maiden name was Tolochko, Rebecca Tolochko. So I got in touch with Dana, and he said, Dana, could you send me this article that you showed me from it was from a Pittsburgh paper, a daily paper or something like that. So she sent me the article. I sent it out to my father. So my father says, we're related. We have to be related. I know the family. I know the children of this person. when before the war, my father had been close with this family. This Gershon Jerome Tolochko had two daughters. One dated my father, one dated his brother. It was like family. They were cousins. So I see that they're mentioned in the article. We have to be related. So then we sort of set out to try to figure out we're related. We reached out to Dana. We invited her and her mother and her father to come and visit. So we had a little bit of a kesher during this year, 2017. Anyway, she graduated, and she invited us to a graduation party at her house. So, it came, it's not going to be kosher. What are we going to do? Anyways, we came to the door. We knocked on the door. It's big dog barking. That doesn't go over well in my family. So my wife said, listen, maybe I'll just wait in the car and you could go in if you want and just say Mazel Tov. And anyways, I peeked my head in. Could you move the dog? We came in. The mother was so excited that they had an Orthodox Jew in their house. She handed me a chicken, like from the local butcher. It's from Kroger, where you can get a kosher, get your rotisserie in a box. And she said, here, this is for you because you can't eat any of the other food in the house. Well, what am I supposed to do with this chicken? It's an entire chicken in the box. Anyways, she took us around. We met some of the family, the friends. We wished them Mazel Tov. She was so proud. She took us around and showed us all the Judaica that she had in her house, an Israeli flag, a Chagall print. And then she took us to the bookshelf. She's showing us this whole wall of a bookshelf with very common and modern, Jewish books, The Chosen and The Fixer, all these things that American Philip Roth books that people read. Anyways, in the middle of the bookshelf is a red box, and it has like a plastic cover on it, and there's like, you can see it's old volumes of something there, and it had Hebrew letters written on it. I immediately thought it's like, maybe it was like this old Mishnah, but I said, what's with this? And they said, well, they don't really know. It was handed down in their family, and the mother in the house, she liked the red box, so she kept it. So I said, come on, tell me a little bit more. So she said, this grandfather, it's the mother's grandfather, Dana is the student of mine, her great-grandfather, wrote a lot of material in the Reform movement. Jerome Gershon Tolochko wrote a lot of educational materials, books and articles and workbooks. So he had a library of like thousands, literally thousands of books. So when he died, the family gave some away. They sold some. They just threw some out. But she said she guesstimated that there were like 3,000 books in the family. So out of all of the books, she saw this red box, this woman. And she saw it was really her mother saw this red box and said she'll keep the red box. They know that it was important to them. So the grandmother of this girl kept it. And now it's sitting in the daughter's house, this was her grandmother kept this, this was her grandfather's book, and she kept it, and she said she had no idea what it was. So I just figured it was like Mishnayos, that names of the sechtas on the outside. So I said, can I take a look? And they said, we were hoping you would, because we don't know what it is. Anyways, I open it up, and I take out, there were 6 volumes, and they were in pretty bad shape. I opened one up, and I see it's handwriting. These are not Mishnayos, not printed Mishnayos. It's like a lot of handwriting. I said, this is Hebrew. It's hard to read, but it's Hebrew. Who wrote it? So we have no idea. This red box, we like the red box because my mother kept the red box. Her mother kept the red box. We have no idea. I said, it's not to be believed. Let me take it. I mind if I take it home and I'll look at it. So that's why I took the book home. I started to look in it. I opened up about the 4th volume in. There was actually some calligraphy. Sefer Matamei Yitzchak with the vowels, so you know how to pronounce it right. And it said the Mechaber's name was Yitzchak. There was a next name which looked like Morris. I mean, I couldn't make it out. It didn't make any sense. And then Tolochki or Tolochko. So I get it. Like, this is the author is some Tolochko. It's somewhere in her family. I'm in the family tree somewhere. I don't exactly know how. So I couldn't even figure out the second name. Anyways, my kids came. It must have been Pesach time, or it was probably Pesach time. It was graduation. So my kids came, unless it was already the next maybe this summer. They came in the summer after graduation time. They came and they started to look in it, and they did some research. They saw that there's a name Marim. Marim is like a name from Grodno. It said Ish Harodna at the end of this introduction that he wrote. So it was a Yid, his name was Yitzchak, and it was a Tolochko, and the middle name we didn't know so well. And then we saw that it was from the city of Tolochko. So we found Marim. Oh, Marim Tolochko. What's the name Marim? I never heard of it before. Anyways, over the time that I've done research with David Cohen, who I'm very close with, he mentioned that Marim is probably a takeoff from the name Meir, like Meryl, something like that. It was maybe a name from, had a name Meir. Now, it happens to be in the family tree when we went back. My relative is a Meir Hillel Tolochko, my direct line. This Yid is in the next family, that's his nephew. So my great-great-grandfather was his nephew. And I know that the name Meir is in the family. Anyways, lo and behold, Marim is the name. It was a common name apparently in Grodno. Rav Kalman Epstein had the name Kalman Marim Epstein, and he was from Grodno. So that's, I think it was Rav Zelig Epstein or Rav Kalman Epstein. One of them had the second name, though, of Marim. And it's apparently a name. It was like a takeoff name. It's another Yid told me that a parish on the Yerushalmi said that the Talmidim of Marim and Rutenberg wanted to name their Talmidim after him, but they had such murra for naming their children after the Marim and Rutenberg, so they made up a name Marim, which is like Maram, something like that. His mayor, his wife. Anyways, in the end, so this is his name, and now I had to do more research to find out exactly how we were. And I started to work on the Sefer slowly but surely. But that's basically how I found the Sefer through the work, the kiruv work that we do here in Atlanta. And then I started to, chip away at it.
Really an amazing story. I mean, so this is, we'll get to more of this later, but it is in the Sefer. It's printed, the story in Hebrew, and then there's an English one that you have, and you can send them. Anyone wants to read the English write-up, they did a lot of what you said, but in written form, can email me. I have it. I'm sure you can email you. We'll talk more about it towards the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
But, so I guess you realize that now there is some haskamos in here. I want to discuss these in here that you found these, because, like you said, you found his name. Do you know anything else about him other than this? That he's related to you, he's related to her?
I worked on a family tree. I even had a friend that I know in Passaic. He does work on these type of things, and he did research. And it's a guess. We know his family tree because I know what is a cousin of mine, and my family tree. And they meet somewhere up in about the 5th generation back. That his brother, we believe, was a Moshe Aryeh, who was my great-great-grandfather, great-great-great-grandfather, and this year Yitzchak Marim Tolochko. But it's so far back. My father once started to do research on this side of the family. So he got back about 3 or 4 generations, and he wrote a note on a piece of paper, which I still have. He's no longer alive. And it said, I see no one's interested in this, so I'm not doing any more research in this area. That was it. Then he was still alive when I found the Sefer. So he said he never knew that there would be anybody like enough of a Talmud Chacham that could write on Shas. It's not to be believed in that side of the family.
Yeah, the Sefer's on the whole Shas, like I said, Mishnah.
It's on the whole Shas. So the best we can do is I followed his family line. He had a son, Wolf. He makes reference to him in the Hakdama to the Sefer, that if anybody has questions, they can turn the questions over to this son, Wolf, and his son, David Hirsch. My father heard the name David Hirsch, and he said when he was young, his mother used to tell a story that the phone rang in this Reform rabbi's home on Shabbos. So the Reform rabbi said, answer the phone. So David Hirsch yelled out, it's Shabbos, you're not allowed to answer the phone. So Jerome Gershon Tolochko said, it might be an emergency, you can answer the phone. He knew a story about David Hirsch. So I knew it was close, I just didn't know how exactly all of the family went back. But basically we created a tree, and it's my great uncle is the Machaber. All we could find, he died in Grodno. He must be buried in Grodno. I'm assuming in a pretty big cemetery in Grodno. I don't know if there are many that are even left now after what happened in Europe after the Churban. But his son Wolf came to the United States of America, He's buried in Philadelphia in the Har Nebo Cemetery, Mount Nebo, they call it, something like that. And my relative is married a few blocks down in the Montefiore Cemetery. These are two old cemeteries in Philadelphia. So we went last summer to be mispalo and to at least be mavaker at these kvarim of our avos.
So I guess this wolf brought these ksavim, and they ended up later. And you're saying that they weren't from at a certain point, but this wolf was from, as you know?
Wolf was from. He must have been. His father referred to him as, and in fact, in one of the sections, he quotes his son as asking him this question. So he was a Talmud Chacham. David Hirsch was a Rav from, and they obviously kept the sefer. From one of the inside pages, he started to write. He made a reshima of names with whatever they were, Russian, whatever the monetary value was, but a Russian amount of money that people were donating to print the sefer because he wanted to print it, but he was never able to do it. And then it's 5 generations that no one ever spent the time. Maybe by the time someone was able to make enough money or get enough money together, they didn't think anybody would be interested in printing such a sefer. So it didn't get printed. And that was the opportunity that came towards me, that I found this sefer. It was unprinted. I just felt like an achrayus. I'm a descendant, and he wants to be Marbitz's Torah, so I made an effort to put it out.
So basically, about his biography, last 2 things I'll say. First of all, if anyone knows anything, they should email you, right? I'll have you email.
Yeah, you know that in Eretz Yisrael, I eventually, through my son, who was learning in Torah's Chaim, my son Shua, there's a Yid, Ari Rudensky. Ari Rudensky is a Rav in the Rebbe in the Yeshiva, second Seder, and I think he wrote on, he did the Keren Ora on Zvachim, I think, or on Kachin, he put it out. So he knew about Svarim, and he made a shidduch between Rav Eliel Sandomirsky. He's the one who did actually the transcribing over. So Rav Eliel Sandomirsky, I was telling you this. What did I want to tell you this for? Oh, you just asked. Oh, so he printed. He never heard of him. We never heard of him. So they printed an article in the Atei last Pesach. It was under Tzafun Borech. So Tzafun, this was like something hidden, and they wanted to be Mefarsim. Maybe someone knows the name, has heard of the name. Anyways, they printed the article about it. I sent the picture over. It was, I think they made a lot. I wouldn't trust much written in newspapers anymore after that article, but they wrote a whole article about the sefer, and they got one phone call from a Yid who said he would pay money for the haskama of the Marim discus. That seems interesting. Doesn't need the rest of the sefer, but that haskama he would like to have.
So let's get there. We'll get to Rabbi Sandomirsky, but let's get there because I want to get to the haskamos. The only thing we do, so I'm telling the listeners on this podcast, if anyone has anything, email me, email you. I'll put your email. They can reach out. They should please let you know. But in the sefer, there's a couple of haskamos, and he was in contact with a couple of rabbanim. So why don't you tell the listeners, Raul Diskin, Shimon Sefer, there's a couple really interesting that he was in contact with, and you have their handwriting.
Our first inroad to finding out where he was is that there was a website that my son-in-law found, Chaim Trapp, and you could look up people that wrote shilas into Tshuva Svarim. So his name, Talachki, this Yitzchak Meron Talachki, appeared in the Divrei Malkiel. So we looked in the Divrei Malkiel, and sure enough, we found the stykle Torah he wrote in Yavamis was a shaila that he asked in the Divrei Malkiel. It was one and the same. So the Divrei Malkiel himself wrote in one of the Chuvas, I think it's Hey, he wrote that he was mistomim, that there was a Yid in this small town who could write such a shaila that he was in touch with. Maybe gain a friendship together. So if the Divrei Malkiel was an example, that was at least ma'ames for us. This Yid is like he knows somebody. Then I couldn't decipher many of the haskamas. They have these very colorful and wavy names so I didn't know who people wrote. There's one haskama that's a one-liner, and it looked like to me it said Meir Levish Malbim. That's what it looked like it said. But I said, I can't imagine, where would he get haskama from the Malbim? Kahaba was about haskama from the Malbim. So throughout the Sefer, several times he makes a reference to spending Shabbos with Rav Shimon Sofer. He said over Torah in front of the Mario Diskin. He makes reference to these are in his Chedushim. So he had connection to these Yidden over the years that he was writing. This is the 1830s, 1840s, 1850s. We surmise that he was nifted probably around 1890, maybe even 1900. Not really sure.
Yeah, so you mentioned Divrei Makil. That's the Makil Tzvi Tenenbaum from Lomja. He was the Tshuva's Divrei Makil. I think you printed the Tshuva from him in here, and then you also you have in here haskamos. I'll just mention Yemral Diskin, the Malbim, and you printed the people could see in the front of the Sefer.
Yeah,
he has a Landau, the domestic Eliezer on the
Eliezer,
Shimon Sefer, yeah, from Rabbi Shimon Sefer. Then
there's one haskama at the end. The last haskama, they don't know who it's from. It's Aaron and then Yodo. I think it ends there. The names in the actual book, it's cut off. That's the end. It says.
Yeah, so that's the last one. I will mention the other one you have from the Yeshua.
Shia Kutner. Of Shia Kutner is on.
Yeah, and then you have from Zerach Diskin from Grodman.
Zerach is the brother of the Marim.
Yeah, Bechim Michal Wolfson said Balmachaber Sfas Hayom. I'm not familiar with him, and then so there's a couple of haskamas. Obviously, he was in contact. And what about in the Sefer itself? So obviously, like I said, there's 2 volumes he has on the whole Shas and on Mishnayos. He quotes also in the Sefer. He's quoting also other Talmidei Chachamim and Rabbanim and people that he was involved. Right?
Yeah. So in the back of the second Sefer, there's a page. The last page has a list of all the places where he quoted various. He has a lot of Torah from Rabbi Shulei Diskin, and it's several other. I'm grateful to Machon Sofrim, Rabbi Eliezer Ralbag. He's the one who helped me with the typesetting, and he took some of these stykle. He's a descendant, I think, of Rabbi Shulei Diskin. So he had printed some of them over in a sefer that he put out, I think, for one of his son's weddings, and I think the Maril on Yevomis. But these are stykle Torah that he sometimes asked them. He heard it over. I actually myself found that piece from Rav Yaakov Gesundheit. He wrote over a stykle Torah from him. So I don't know if he heard it from him or he just wrote it over from him, that he had heard him, this piece of Torah that he wrote. Anyway, so these are referenced throughout the Sefer, and we were hoping to find out more about him through these relationships. I don't know how this happened, but the Ola Shlomo is that's Rav Lipschitz. So Shlomo Lipschitz, he wrote a Sefer on Kodshin, and in Tamura, I think it's around Daf Tesvav, there's Agadata there. He quoted Yedidi Ahuvi, Rav Yitzchak Marim Tolochko, and he quoted over a parish that he said in his Sefer.
In Oila Shlomo, this
in the Oila Shlomo on Tamura, he quotes this Mechaber Yitzchak Marim.
Wow. So obviously he was really involved with Rabbanim.
Apparently he was very involved. I never heard of anybody. I come from 3 daros of non-from people. I didn't know anybody beyond that. And to have such a yichus is mamish unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. That was very meaningful to me. But anyway, so the Torah is very delightful. It's generally he's a Rashash Yid, he's a Rashi, he's Tosfos, he Marsha, he has great cover to them. In one my Rosh Kollel, my Shutif said over, Rabbi Pransky said over a stykle Torah in Zvachim, and he quoted from the name escapes me right now, a Sefer. It's a famous Zvachim Sefer, Kodshin Sefer. So he quoted over for maybe it was I think it's Tzon Kodshin. He quoted over the Tzon Kodshin, and then he riddled him in what he heard from the Tzon Kodshin. And then he wrote later, the reason why I reacted so strongly is because it's known that the Tzon Kodshim's son or grandson, I don't know which one it was, took over and wrote some shtiklach Torah in the Tzon Kodshim. And they were not the Tzon Kodshim's only, he had a great reverence for the Tzon Kodshim, but for the Yid who wrote in claiming he was the Tzon Kodshim, printing it under the Tzon Kodshim's name, he let him have it because he said something that he didn't agree with at all. It's around, I think, in the Chofs, or Yud's in the Chofs in Zvachim.
Yeah, the Tzon Kodshim was the Teres Chaim, Rom Chaim Shor, and it was published much later by one of his grandchildren.
So apparently there's some other shtiklach Torah that came in, and he was saying that this piece that came in doesn't make any sense, and it couldn't have been from the Pikon show of the Tzon Kodshim.
Now let me ask you, in the Sefer also, there's a bunch of times that's like Madura Tinyana in parentheses. That's because there was 2 editions?
Yeah, so what happened was that he wrote all the way through, and then he these are like 6 notebooks. So like apparently when he felt it was necessary, he would just add in a Madura Kama, a Madura Basra of a Masechta. And he had, so like in the table of, at least on the outside of the spine of the books that he wrote, he had the Madura Kama of these Masechtas and then Madura Basra. I don't know how he decided to put them. The Menachos is split in half between 2 of the books that he had, but I guess he couldn't afford a lot. It's not like he was a wealthy Yid. He couldn't even publish the Sefer. He was just working on these notebooks. I don't exactly know what he was going to do because he got haskamos written in these notebooks, and that's where he wrote his Torah. How was he going to publish it? What was he exactly going to do with those haskamos? Maybe print them over. I don't know, but it never came about. And his loss was my gain because it gave me an opportunity to do it. But it's just strewn throughout the Sefer. Like he'll be writing on a Masechta, and then he'll write a Madura Basra of certain Masechta. So Eliel Sandomrisky, when he put it together, just put all of the pieces under the same Masechta for ease of usage.
Now you were talking about the style. I want to just ask you about the style a little bit more. So it's like Mamish Gefes. He's going through Pshat, just Pshating more Rashitoises, really.
Very Pshat. It's not so much even in Rashi does this. He's more interested, like if the Rashash has a Ha'ara or the Marsho has a Ha'ara, and he'll ask Akasha. He had a good sense of like relationships between Tanoim and Amoraim and who would have seen whom, and he just said it's a certain hekif that he had, but he's clearly had great reverence for the Marsha. He wrote about him so beautifully, but he was mavar or something, and he had a kash on something, and he would take the Marsha's malach. He would say no, it doesn't make sense, and he would say his own. It's really a very chat oriented. I feel the people that I've gotten reactions from the most are people that are like teaching high school kids or people that are learning for themselves. I dropped the Sefer off to Reb Simcha Cook. He's the Manal of Ner Yisrael, the high school in Ner Yisrael. So I dropped it off. I wanted to deliver it to him. I gave it to him. He was in a summer chabura. He had about 8 young boys around the table, high school kids, and this is in the summertime. So he called me the next night to say that a boy had asked a question in Rosh Hashanah. One time on one daf it says Levi, and the next it says Reb Levi. So he says, was he Levi or he's a Reb Levi? How come it changed his name? So he said he looked around at a few sparm. He said, Silverman just brought me this Sefer. I'll take a look in there. Anyways, he makes the ha'ara. He says that b'chol hashas kula, it never changes a person's name from their name to Reb so-and-so, except for 2 exceptions. He lists the exceptions. One of them, he explains the reason for the exception. One piece of Torah he said over in his youth. The other piece of Torah he said over when he had smicha. He says, but this is very unusual. This Levi and Reb Levi, he tried to say a mahalach, but he left in more of a kasha. So Simcha Cook was just amazed, like it's unbelievable. I told the story about how I found the Sefer. That's the type of question he would ask. Like it just, it had to do with like the understanding the Pashat Pshat in the Gemara, working through the Rishonim. Not lumdis. There's not a whole lot of lumdis. There is lumdis. I don't mean it that. Just saying it's more in understanding the Pshat of the Gemara.
Now you mentioned Rabbi Sandomirsky, you got to him to work on it. So you were telling me that, and I think you said this before. You definitely told me before we started recording how you tried to work on it first, but you realized the handwriting is really hard to read. The paper was not
Schrecklich. The letters were jived together, and it was very hard to decipher. You had to hold it. I wrote on sugyas that I knew, and it was still very difficult to forget. I didn't know all the names of the people that he was referring to. Sometimes he made a reference. He did a Mesek Eliezer, Chaveri and Ahuvi, and he would write about. So I just didn't have enough experience. I tried a number of them. I have maybe about 10, 15 stykle that I wrote myself. And then I said after a while, at this rate, I'm never going to get done with this. This is 6 volumes. So that's when I sent the first volume over, and he started to work at it. Just as an example, the letter Beis looked exactly like a kuf. He made and then he pulled the leg down at the end. And so every daf, it's like I'm looking at it, says it looked like kuf aleph, kuf beis, kuf gimel, and it's chof aleph, chof beis, chof gimel. That was just a chof that he made, and he brought the leg down. Why? I don't know. But it was just his style of writing. He wrote very quickly. Sometimes there were crossed out sections in the Sefer. But this Eliel Sandomirsky said he had to take time off. He told me that before Erevin, and I think before Chum, 2 Masechtas, that he had to just chazer the Masechta first, because it was so much in the pshat of the Masech. You have to hold it to know what his ha'oras were.
Wow. So basically, because of this whole story, that's how you decided to publish it? I mean, ask you, why did you decide to
I just felt it was such a hashgacha. It's an unusual story of how it happened, and to have such choshev haskamos, and no one knows this yet. That we didn't even know. My family, there's not in all of my lineage, I don't think there's anybody. Think about it. 3 generations of ladies held on to this book, not even knowing what it was. They had no idea. They can't read Hebrew. They didn't know what it was. And I came into the house. I walked into the house and they said, could you please tell us what this is? Why did they save it? Because it was a red box. It's just unbelievable. So slowly but surely, I just felt a certain sense, like I felt achrayus, like, wow, this kid wanted to publish this in his lifetime. He wasn't able to. So I want to try to do it. In the pages, there were like notes. So there was an address of two addresses in Albany, Georgia. Now, mind you, this family ended up coming to Georgia for a few years so this girl would go to school here. And they brought this sefer with them. It had an address of somebody in a city 3 hours south of here. Non-frum people, intermarried people, but they were related. They're also related to Tolochko. So I found some other relatives that are down in Georgia. It was just slipped into the pages of a subsequent generation that had mishpocha here. People must have moved to Georgia itself. A year after this young lady graduated, who connected me, the family moved to Iowa. And I would have not, the window of opportunity of just coming across the sefer was like down to a few years. And I had no idea I had such a relative. So I just felt the hashgacha of it all coming together, that it was, I had an achrayus to at least try, as he wrote, he wanted to be marbitz in it. He wasn't able to do it in his lifetime. His children weren't, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren weren't. I felt I should do something, make an effort to do it.
Wow. Okay, this is the hashgacha. You printed it, so you mentioned Rabbi Sandemirski worked in it, but I know you mentioned Rabbi Robag, Bechon Seifrim. I think you're friends with Gedalia Zlato. It's article some part of your
website. Yeah, so everybody helped it. I had never published a sefer before. I didn't know exactly how to do all of the things. So first, Eliel Sandanos, he got about halfway through, and then he said, listen, I told you I would do it for this amount. I really can't. It's taking too much time. My whole family knows Yitzchak Marim Tolochko. It's like all they talk about in the house. And he worked on the dining room table. He worked for a year and close to a year and a half, just transcribing it over. So listen, it was Siyata D'Shmai found him, and he loved doing it. It was very meaningful to him. And that took a little bit of time and effort and resources. Baruch Hashem, my wife supported this endeavor. Then we had to get it typesetted. So I have a dear friend, Avi Weinstock, who's mechutin with Eliezer Ralbag, so that brought me to him, and he did the typesetting in the Machon Sofrim. And then Gedalia, who had known about the story already for a while, I said, listen, I didn't want to put any pressure. I haven't got what to do, but I'm very close. He's a camper of mine from Camp Monk, and we worked together in Camp Monk for many years, was close with his family, all of his siblings, many of his siblings. So Baruch Hashem, everybody helped and was able to put it out. It's really an unbelievable product.
Right. To be clear,
I love it. I love the stories about it. It's so exciting when people are learning it. And I shared it with a number of people, and I'd love to share it with more. I only printed 250 just to at least start the project. I wasn't planning on even selling it. If people are interested, I want to be marbitz the tourists, so they should feel free to get in touch with me. Or they can get in touch with me through you, but I'd be happy to send. I have a number of copies left if they want to get in touch. But I'm just interested in how many people. I don't want it to go on bookshelves. I'd like it to go on. It's a famous joke that Yid says that he used to give Sforim out for bar mitzvahs. Now he gives umbrellas. At least they open them every once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. So first of all, to be clear, it's not an art scroll project. You helped you with the printing, but it's not none of the also.
Yes. It was
and like you said, yeah, absolutely. Listen, somebody, one of the listeners, I ask listeners a lot for guest suggestions and feedback, and this is one of those episodes where somebody emailed me and said, "You got to hear this story," and they sent me your write up, and I was like, "This is fascinating." And I got in touch with you. You sent me a copy, a set, and it really was interesting. And so it's one of those things where it's a very interesting sefer. It's a really fascinating story. He really has on the whole shas. I think it's I mentioned I think it's about 1,500 pages or something
Yes,
almost.
yes.
There's a lot of material. The whole Shas, he has a Mishnayos.
A lot of it. He has on the
So
Mishnayos. He has some in the back. He wrote a Ha'oris on a Sefer written by Rabbi Yaakov Shor. It was a Sefer about Tanaim, I think, Tanaim and Amoraim. So he had Ha'oris. He's got about four. It's one of the longest pieces he has. It's about 4 pages. He had a Sefer Meir Einei Chachamim. He wrote about Talmidei Chachamim. So he had Ha'oris that he wrote on his Sefer. It's just unbelievable. Like, he had such a idea of the Tanaim and Amoraim and how they came together. Anyway, so he wrote Ha'oris. I believe that someone is printing an anicle of the Rav Yaakov Shor is now printing this Sefer over. So he wanted to be able to, he wanted to lay through these Ha'oris on the Sefer in this new Sefer coming out. It's gewaldig. It's mamish unbelievable.
wow, yes. So I after that story, so we scheduled this podcast episode to record, but I posted it on Twitter, and I posted on the Twitter account, and I posted the pictures, and I got people asking me about it. Wow, and I know that Big Eisen reached out to me, reached out to you, wanted to get copies of it. So people are definitely interested. It's very interesting, and like I said, if anyone would learn it, it goes through Shas. It's very geschmack. Yes, like you told me some other stories before we started recording. People have told you they really used it, and it really come across useful things. So, like you said, if anybody's interested in it, email me, email you. I'll put your email in the show's notes. They can reach out to you and tell them
Rabbi Dave Silverman. It's Rabbi Dave Silverman at Gmail. It's pretty straightforward. Rabbi Dave Silverman at gmail.com.
Perfect. And I'll also put it in the show's notes. They can email me also, and they can tell you heard on the podcast and they're interested in it. So, okay, great. Very interesting. And hopefully it should be a schus for you. It should be a schus for him, and people should know this Torah.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to share about it. It's mamish unbelievable. I've said over some of his Torah. Some of my chaverim have said over some of his Torah. It's been a tremendous achiyus. As I mentioned, I had sent a copy to a chaver of mine in Eretz Yisrael. I just feel it was like the timing was unbelievable till it got to him. The day it got to him, he had said over shir on this Tosfos in Baba Basra, and he left shir with a kasha that the Tosfos Yontav asked. He says, "Well, look in this sefer. Tosfos Yontav says a pshat. He says that with this mahalach, you can answer the Tosfos Yontav's question." So that is like the hashgacha and just finding Torah that is just like so. The timing has just been all a fascinating process for my whole family and for us. It's a tremendous chus. Anybody that's interested in learning it, I would love to share it.
Okay, great. Thank you. So, thank you, Rav David, for joining me, and thank you for sharing the story.
Pleasure. Okay.